If you said, Cliff, dude, I want to make $100,000 in the year of 2018. All right, dude, let's do it. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, as long as you're willing to do whatever it takes. But that's the problem, is that most people who are living in circumstances that they are not okay with are not willing to do the things that it takes to change them.
She's got a fake boyfriend. He lives in LA. Says she met him online. I mean, what else can I say? Said he'll visit next May. But that's hard to believe, cause he works at a cafe and playing tickets ain't free. Says he's in school. He's doing big things. He'll be the best welder this world's ever seen. God, I sound like an asshole. I don't mean to be mean. It's just when we talked, you had bigger dreams. I know, I drag my feet and did you wrong. No one on this earth deserves the weight upon my love this long. I never told you sorry, so I gotta put it in the song. My nightmares, they haunt me. I know.
But podcast and stuff we just started. So who am I here with?
Clifton Miles.
Who is Clifton Miles?
Like, you want me to introduce myself?
No, yeah, that's the whole point.
Oh, okay,
and because
yeah.
I'm like curious, like how people describe themselves. You know?
I'm just a dude. I'm from San Antonio. Record bands, record musicians for a living, and this is my spot that I do most of my stuff out of. And got a wife, got a son. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, people have said I'm like a jack of all trades. I do a lot of things, but I think the thing that most people recognize me for is the recording.
Okay. How did you get into music, just in general, though?
Man, that's a long-winded answer.
I mean, I don't mind. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
We're here for bloated podcast.
Yeah. So we when I was young, I guess I gotta give credit to my parents. You know, my dad was a classic rock guy. My mom as well. You know, they always listened to classic rock. You know, classic rock, and they always had like stereo systems and like boom boxes. And you know, when I was young, I found myself gravitating to the hip hop station. You know, so like when I was a kid, you know, I was getting exposed to classic rock. Some of it I liked, some of it I didn't like. And I'll turn it off. Some of it I liked, some of it I didn't like. And the stuff that I liked that was popular at that time was like Daft Punk, which was like brand new, you know, at the time. Like they weren't like this deity that they are now. And are
they
like,
still good or not as that in their current form?
I think
curious.
they're better.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's evolved to something. I mean, they've always been something amazing. They were making like EDM with like instruments. You know, they were actually performing EDM. Like they kind of, I don't know.
Oh,
I
you
don't
mean
think
the live show? You mean, or
no? I mean, they just in general. Like, I mean, it wasn't techno. EDM wasn't EDM 30 years ago.
It wasn't the umbrella.
No,
genre
like it was
now.
techno is what the generic, like if it was electronic music, it was called techno. You know, that's what they called it. And they were doing what is now considered EDM, but they were doing it like with gear, like they were playing it.
Well, hearing those, because I wasn't the biggest Daft Punk fan until like way late in the game. I wasn't early on them, but hearing their earlier recordings, it seems like they were very sample based. So
it sounds like it, but they're actually dudes playing that stuff.
I mean, but if you look at some of the things, like there are credits listed, so there are samples in a lot of that
Oh
stuff.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, definitely. There's definitely
like particular album one, at least album
Yeah.
one for sure. After that, then maybe they start transforming. But definitely album one and the singles, especially like if you see the singles under their individual names, like whatever their real names are, before they started being Daft Punk, what it really is, like you can go hear like their stuff and it's like, yeah, it's like they have a sample and they'll
For
loop
sure.
it and do
I
stuff.
guess what I should clarify is that it wasn't made on computers.
Oh yeah, sure.
Like they're samples, but they were sampling records, like
and hardware and stuff.
with actual gear, like
more like this thing here.
Yeah, it's crazy, synthesizers and stuff. And so, but anyways, I really liked what they were doing. I really liked Tupac. I liked Biggie, and they were like, that was kind of like when that whole thing was about to start going down. Like, I mean, it hadn't yet, but it was getting there, and I really, really liked the West Coast stuff a lot. Even as a 5-6-year-old kid, like I was like that. Coolio, like Dangerous Minds, like soundtrack, like, I mean, like, but then, like the Power Rangers movie came out, and it's like there was Red Hot Chili Peppers, and like, there was like they did a cover of the song Higher Ground, and I was like all about that. And then it's like and then like when I was a little older, like Batman Forever came out, and Seal Kiss from a Rose was like, that was the single, and that was my jam. Like, I might have been like in 4th grade or something, but I just love music. As a kid, I loved listening to it. And as I got a little older, I started playing in band, like in high school, in middle school, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, I was playing, clarinet. And, I had I didn't really have any interest in it. I had an interest in music, and I had an interest in reading music, but I got lumped with the clarinet because my teeth are jacked up, and that was the only thing that like would work with my mouth. That's what she said. But like so I started playing clarinet, and I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I didn't love it enough to like practice. You know what I mean? And when you play in band, like you pretty much have to practice. So yeah, from there, as I kind of like moved into high school, or like from 8th grade to 9th grade, I started, I don't remember what it was exactly, but I think it was more or less me starting to listen to like rock and metal, that, I knew that in order to make those sounds, you had to have a guitar. Like, and so seeing music videos and seeing guys playing guitar, I think it really piqued my interest, and it was fun and frustrating always, and that's pretty much always been what music has been for me. It's a fun and frustrating always, because I've never been able to like get what I'm looking for, whether it be because I lacked the technical ability or I didn't have the gear. It's always one or the other. Like, it's like when I had the gear, now I don't have the skill to play that, and then at my adult age now, I don't have the time to practice to attain the skill. So it's it's always still like, it's always been levels of frustration and fun at the same time, because you learn, like in the journey, you learn to do other things that are cool. But it's like always like, there's always a guy better than you. There's always a guy that's faster, that's cleaner, that's got better gear. So it's always fun and frustrating at the same time. But that's kind of how I got into music. And it's kind of weird. Like I was talking about the other day with another gentleman, like the pretty much me picking up a guitar simultaneously was me picking up recording, because once I started learning how to play guitar and I started having ideas, like very quickly, the concept was to get them documented. And so I got the little Tascam like Porta Studio. It's right there on the shelf. That's
where you first started with?
Yeah, that's what I first started with. And then then it became a journey of getting the cassette information into the computer, and so I would do things to try to put the cassette information into the computer, and then play along with myself, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And after a while, that led to me, one of my friends decided to pick up drums, and there was a learning curve because he wasn't good enough to, and then he became good enough, and then it's like, oh, you can do this, so let's go, so like we jammed. And then one of our friends decided to pick up a bass because we didn't have a bass player, and then our other friend just decided to be the singer. Magnus was our singer.
Okay, I think he's mentioned that.
He was our singer. That was our very first band. It was me, our drummer, his name was Sean, and his brother, his name was Derek. And so we practiced at their house because they lived together and they were brothers, and they were like our rhythm section, it's like our bass and drums. So me and Magnus would go over there, and that's where we practiced.
Around what year is this?
Like 02, 03.
Okay. And so I'm just getting here. I hadn't met him yet.
No, yeah. That was our first band, and I think we played in that band for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And then
there's some recordings of that, right?
Somewhere.
Because I think he's shown me some recordings of a few of his old bands, but I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, I was in all of them except well, he did some stuff that was apart from me, but most of the stuff that we did, like, that was documented, was him and I.
Okay.
In different capacities. Yeah. And then when we stopped doing that, we made a second band, and that was the band that kind of like took off, and him and I played guitar together, and that was called Pneumothorax. And that's probably the one that you've more or less became familiar with. I think we tried to kind of bury the first band, and just kind of forget about it, for both of our sakes. But yeah, the second band, I'm still proud of what we did, even though it wasn't like, we weren't amazing, we weren't the best metal band, but we played some killer shows. We had a huge following. People loved it. People loved what we were doing. And yeah, we did that for a few years. That we toured the country with that band.
Oh wow.
We toured the West. I'll paraphrase. I'll rephrase that. We toured the West Coast with that band, and we played shows across Texas. I met some of the coolest people in my life. Two of my friends got married because we had that band. You know what I mean? Like, so like we did some really cool stuff. We met really great people, and we made a lot of good memories. And so that was, that's pretty much how I got into music and what kept me in music.
So my next one that you started to answer it there was going to be like, when do you transition into recording? But you said right away, pretty much.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like serious, but it was, the curiosity was there from the get-go. And once we started our first band, when we went to record that band, that's when it was like, for me, I was like, this is cooler than being in a band, is how I felt at the time. This process was so foreign to me, and seeing like microphones and capturing sounds and stuff was like, it had this like, I don't know how to even describe it. It had this like presence to it that was just very fascinating to me. And I would always, I would start writing things, picturing how they were going to sound when we heard them back. Like I was already hearing the recording in my brain, like when we were writing the stuff, and I would think of, it helped me write better songs, I feel, after we recorded for the first time, and they weren't so one-dimensional. And, there was more harmonies and things like that. But I took to the studio real fast, and there was a guy that ran a home studio here in town that let me come hang out whenever I brought band. I started bringing in bands left and right. Like I would pitch him to my friends' bands so that I could go hang out with them while they were recording. I just really liked being there when people were recording. Yeah. And so ended up having a falling out with that guy years later. And that's kind of when I started picking it up myself.
What, when you start doing it yourself, what, like, are you beyond that already? The task?
Oh yeah.
Now? So what are we on?
Where did I get there? No, not Pro Tools yet. So when I started out, I was still living at home, and when I started out, when I reached the very primitive beginnings of where I'm at now, I guess. Is where I'm gonna go with this. Is that I had started my career at the time. I was no longer playing in bands, and I was on the twilight of that, and I was working full time at a car dealership selling cars, and I was making really, really great money, like really good money, like for a guy that lived at home with his parents, had no bills.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
so
I was
all
making
of it goes to you.
stupid money. I mean, I was making, 50,000-60,000 a year, just living at home, and I think I only did that 1 year, but as far as like before I bought the house and started actually having grown man bills, but like, yeah. So that year I pretty much bought anything and everything I wanted. I bought a watch, like a $3,000 watch.
Oh, wow.
I was buying, I mean, I was stupid. Like I bought a pin that was worth $800.
Damn.
A pin, and I had a few of them, and I was buying suits and ties, and I had that desire to continue being creative, and so I would go to Guitar Center and buy things I needed as I realized I needed them. So my first question, I walked in there, I was like, I want to record, but I have a computer, a PC. I want to record like 8 tracks at one time. Like, how do I do that? And the guy was like, do you have an interface? And I was like, what's that? And he's like, you need an interface that will allow you to multi-track record. And I was like, okay, well, what are the options? And he's like, well, here's the low end and here's the high end. So I was like, at the time it wasn't serious for me. I just was like, I'll just take whatever. So I bought the cheapest one they had. It was called a PreSonus FirePod, I think is what it was.
They're still out there.
Something like that. I think that's what it was called. Yeah. And it was like $199 or something at the time, or $99 or somewhere in that price range. I think it was called the FirePod. And then I needed mics. And I, from playing over the years, like you had mentioned earlier, is like I had like an SM57 and I had an SM58. And so I knew that I had 2 like mics that could make a decent sound, but I needed more. I needed condensers for like overheads. And I just kind of remember like what my buddy, or my old buddy at the time used to do when we recorded. So I knew I needed a kick mic, I needed tom mics, I needed overhead mics, and I would use like my 57 on the snare and 58, on like vocals and stuff. And I just went out and bought the bare minimum cables, a few stands, a snake, to route everything.
Yeah.
And that was the very beginning of kind of what became this, like the very primitive early stages of that. And I think the original question was like where did it start from?
So like what are you even using? You get all that gear, but then like it's not Pro Tools, so what
it came the FirePod came with a LE version of Cubase.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I just started exactly. I started using Cubase, and a buddy of mine lived in the neighborhood, just so happened to use Cubase and was into recording as well. So him and I would kind of nerd out over this stuff, and he maybe had like a year ahead of me worth of experience. So he kind of showed me around a little bit, how to use Cubase and how to open tracks and create tracks. And then I started, I think that was, like I said, the twilight of my band playing time. So I think we had a few more rehearsals with my band before we finally kind of agreed we weren't going to do it anymore. And I took my stuff to the storage unit, and I did my first like drum recording there in the storage unit with my drummer during a practice, just to try and record a song. And it was cool, I mean, it was awful, but I mean, it was horrifyingly bad, but it was my first experience with like putting mics in front of drums and hitting record and playing through something and punching and not, you know what I mean? Just kind of doing it. So yeah, that was kind of where it started.
It's going to be, I guess, bad story transition, but I'm just curious and it's in my head right now. So I see you got all this hardware. And there's another couple around here. They do like footwork electronic music. They're from Chicago, but they also have a lot of hardware. And being in electronic music, that one's normally has the stereotype of being in the box. And I've heard a bunch of your recordings. They sound real good.
Thank you.
I'm always like, damn, not that I don't do a lot of rock stuff, but like my first instrument was guitar, so I did want to start there. People who want to make music was Dream Theater. Never got nowhere near that good.
Yeah.
But when I heard those instrumentals,
yeah.
When I heard those sections, that was the first time I thought like I had this one picture of music, and then I saw them doing that, and I was like, I didn't know that was possible. That seems like fun, So I tried. Yeah. Didn't work, like you said. Most people don't get there, but where was that? Oh yeah. I hear your stuff, and like at least from a mix perspective, like to me it sounds what we would call pro, you know.
Thank you.
So does theirs. And I'm like, is it possible to get that sound in the box, or do I need to get on this hardware tip? Because I've used some of this stuff before, but it's never mine. I've never bought it. It's cost money, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest, no, like it's probably smarter that you don't. I mean, they're like, when you say like hardware, like the physical compressors and like physical like EQs and things like that.
Yeah.
No, not even close.
Because I just see that pattern and trend. Like everybody who sounds amazing. I'm like, hey, I have the hardware, and I'm like, is it? I know I always hear you don't need to do that, but I never see it. I know.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, yeah, because like it's not. No. The key to like getting, like, if there's a holy grail, like a secret sauce, you know, the key is to just get good source tones. I mean, that's really the end. That's the end of it. Like,
you get it in tracking.
As long as you don't overcook, you know, your tracks and you got good source tones, your recording's gonna sound good. I mean, it's gonna sound listenable. You know, no one's gonna be mad at it.
Yeah.
You know, but I found that what happens is most people don't get good source tones. Meaning, like, if you're recording drums, they're not tuning the drums properly. They're not making sure the drums have new heads. They're not coaching the drummer the whole time to hit properly. They're not editing the drums so that they're free of errors and they're all 100% in time. Like, this at the fundamental ground level, like, everything has to be meticulous so that when you get to this stage, it's easy. When you get to the mixing stage, it's easy. But and the hardware doesn't do the hardware, you know, physical compressors sound to me 15% cooler than plugins.
And you can tell the difference?
I can.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's because I've been using plugins for 10 years and I just recently dived into the analog world. So now that I hear it, it's like, man, like,
night and day.
I wish I would have done this earlier.
Yeah.
But that's not anywhere near to say that I could. I mean, in fact, the last mix I did, the one I'm working on now, I didn't even use this stuff. I didn't even use it. The recording I did before I did, and to me, they sound just as cool. A different style of band, but to me, the hardware has pros and cons. You know, there's a reason why a lot of guys are selling their gear and doing everything in the box, because it's a pain in the ass, you know, managing the hardware, because, you know, for one, it can malfunction, you know, and if you're leaning on it so hard and then something goes wrong, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is what they call like recallability. You know what I mean? Like, if you think you're done with a mix, you move on to something else, you've changed the settings, then a band calls you and says, hey man, I need you to tweak this for me real quick, and you didn't write it down, or you forgot what you did, you're screwed again. You know what I mean? It's like,
keep notes,
you know. Yeah, no, there's like I said, there's 10, 15, 20%, you know, mojo in some of this gear that's really cool, and I'm definitely leaning on getting more gear, because to me, the gear isn't making the recording sound great, but it's helping to set me apart from some of, like, I guess, like, the I don't want to sound like an asshole, but I feel like the cooler gear that I have, like, it helps kind of set me apart from the dudes that don't have that cool of stuff.
Yeah, you just stand out more, and you have a more unique sound.
Right.
People
yeah. I mean,
that's a Clifton Miles mix.
Yeah, it's gonna, you know, you're gonna have the recordings are gonna bake through a badass chain. It's gonna yield a better quality product. But then there's also something to be said about walking into a place that has a bunch of cool stuff in the racks that, you know, you're gonna be getting to record through, versus walking into some dude's bedroom with eggshell cartons on the wall and like, you know, a USB mic. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's a twofold win. You know what I mean? But no, the dude that I idolize the most in the world, in my world of metal recording, sold everything and does 100% in the box.
Who is
100% in the box? Colin Richardson.
Okay.
At least that's what I've been told, and I can't tell the difference. I mean, when I hear his latest recordings and I was told they're done in the box, I was like, I mean, you could have fooled me. You know what I mean? Like, because at the end of the day, you're just chasing a sound, you know, and he knows what he's going for because he's been doing it in hardware for years. And it may take caking a few plugins together to create a vibe that was similar to what he's used to, but he knows where he's going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I always imagine like those guys, like, because I know a lot of us when we started out, and like me, like I'm probably more in the like producer field, you know. So a lot of us are always like looking for the next plugin, the next thing to help us do whatever. And I'm like, man, I bet you if we just give our mixes to one of those guys who is a pro like that, with the default, no waves, no UAD plugins, you know, just default Pro Tools, Ableton, whatever you want to give them. But you still like kill it, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, without a doubt. I did a guest teaching at UTSA the other day, and they don't have any plugins.
Who was? I used to work there. Who was there? And I won't know them anymore. But
Andrew Bergman.
Okay, he I think he came in right when I was like leaving.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to work under the old staff, like Dr. Sebald and Chris Klein.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've met Klein.
I mentioned him to you because they both came on my podcast, both those guys.
Oh, okay, cool.
And he said he heard of you at that time, but he didn't remember.
Yeah. Stan Renard was the department head, and Andrew Bergman is running the audio tech course, and I did meet Chris Klein. We're friends on Facebook, I think. Even I don't recall how.
He was my teacher.
Yeah,
he was one of my teachers. I mean, like UTSA is limited, so I felt like what I got more out of him was that he got to be my friend. I think more than he probably taught me in there, because that class is just, there's only so much that they're doing there.
Yeah,
you know? But he's obviously real good.
Yeah. Well, they don't have any plugins in their system. They have badass hardware, but they don't have it set up properly.
Yeah,
I mean, not that they don't have it set up they have it set up properly, but it needs to get tweaked based on the system that they're using, because there's a lot of latency. So you can't actually run that hardware in real time.
Yeah.
You have to print everything. So, part of my guest teaching is basically like a real-time demonstration of mixing. And, he told me the first time I went a couple years ago, and last year, he's like, by the way, all we have is a stock Pro Tools plugin, so hopefully that works. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, to me, it's a fun challenge, and I use the stock. I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and I think, on what's on my screen right now, even just on this page, is 70% just stock Pro Tools plugin. But I love the stock Pro Tools plugins. It's easy, it's low latency. And if I want character, then I'll lean on something else. But
I think when I started, I used to hate a lot of things, but when I was starting, when I get into music, I started on real instruments like guitar and bass. But when I get into this, I was like, man, I never got to be in a band because it's so hard, like getting people and all this stuff. So
yeah.
By then, like, I grew up in New York, and a lot of my friends already started making beats, and I was like, wait, you can make a whole song by yourself? And that enticed me. And I think from a creator's perspective, just everything about it was pretty horrible in terms of the starting stuff from scratch. I think once you approach this program from a tracking perspective and mixing, I think it's still great. And I think internal, whatever you would call it, the sound engine or whatever, I think it destroys all the other DAWs too. And once you're in the mixing phase, but man, when you got a blank canvas, it was clunky for so long. Like I remember being in 7 and you want to play with MIDI and stuff.
Oh, Pro Tools?
Yeah, it was disgusting.
Yeah, I switched. Around Pro Tools 8, I switched over to using Reaper.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah, the tracker.
Huh?
The tracker. It has a tracker function in there. Like, do you know the numbers?
Oh,
if I recall, I feel like Reaper has a tracker.
It might. I don't remember. But the thing for me at the time was that Pro Tools 8 didn't offer delay compensation. And so, you know,
you had to buy the
you had to buy HD
yeah.
to get it, yeah. And so, you know, for me, I didn't have an HD rig. And so, and it was like, so what I had an audition period. I remember it was funny.
Adobe Audition?
No. I started
Okay.
I started auditioning different DAWs, and I really wanted to like Cubase. I was like, I started with Cubase, so I got a demo version of like the pro version, and I remember at the time I was partnered up with this guy that was a big promoter for like the White Rabbit, and he was sending me band after band after band after band. And I mean, at that time, those were like getting my chops years. I wasn't doing a really great job, but the kids liked what I was doing, and it was helping me learn. I was never satisfied, but I was always I was always trying my hardest, you know, to try and get better. And I was recording so much that it's like I just inevitably stumbled upon things that worked and what didn't work. But in that time frame, I remember I got that DAW. I think it was probably 1 p.m. when I got it all set up and got it to work with my interface that I was working with at the time. And it's like, okay, how do I make this do what I do in Pro Tools? And so I was like, I figured out how to create tracks. I figured out how to route the inputs to what I had. And so it was like, okay, how do I punch in and how do I punch out? Okay. How do I edit? Okay. All right. So then I had a band show up at 4:00. And I was like, fuck it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to record them in Cubase and see how it goes. I had never used Cubase. I mean, I never used that version of Cubase. And at the time it was, you know, we were talking 4 years of time frame. So it's completely different. It's not like Pro Tools, which kind of stays the same. I feel like those DAWs like are changing massively every time.
Yeah, Logic has had a big overlook throughout the years.
And so I recorded a band front to back in Cubase and mixed it in Cubase. And it's funny because that band actually got signed and is like touring Europe and shit right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and but it's funny because I'm sure it sounds atrociously bad because I had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know, and like I really had no clue what I was doing, and I just, you know, at the time they were not. I mean, I don't know. I hope they don't hear this, but they were not good. You know, so it's like they weren't good back then, and I wasn't good either. So it was perfect. You know what I mean? Like, so anyways, yeah, I feel bad when I think about it because I'm like I shouldn't have tried to record them in that DAW because I didn't know what I was doing, but it was fun. But anyways, I used it and I was thinking I hated the way the screen looked. Like it was all blue and purple or whatever. And it's just like, just kind of hurt my eyes. And then looking on forums, I found out Reaper had like customizable skins.
Yeah.
And the thing that enticed me about Cubase was it had an editing function that Pro Tools didn't have called slip editing. And Reaper offered slip editing as well. And Reaper also used VST plugins, which I had VST versions of all my plugins.
Can you use those in here? I remember they had the RTAS and the RTAS wrappers and all those things.
RTAS and Pro Tools now doesn't even use RTAS anymore.
What is it? What's the new one?
X.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with Reaper, I could use both. Like you could use RTAS, you could use AAX, you could use AU, which is Apple Logic. Yeah, you could use anything. And so it's really neat. At least at the time, I believe that was the case. It might have been VST and AU or something, but I recall that I never had any trouble. I never lost any plugin functionality when I switched to Reaper. And I used Reaper, I want to say, for about 8 months, and I loved it. I was killing it in Reaper. Some of the first projects that I feel the most proud of, I did in Reaper, and I really, really liked it. Then that was around the time I ended up leaving this house situation and getting my first like commercial spot, like outside the house where I paid a rent and had a glass booths and all that stuff. And the glass in the wall, you know, like the typical studio thing. and my buddy that was mentoring me, you know, in the studio, great friend of mine now, I owe the guy a lot. he only used Pro Tools, and he was like, I'm not gonna learn Reaper. So he's like, you know how to use Pro Tools. And then he was like, men use Pro Tools, dude. Like, come on. Well, fortunately, Pro Tools updated to Pro Tools 9, and it had delay compensation. So it's like, oh, well,
that's
solved.
The one they let
solved.
Go of the box, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to you didn't have to have a piece of their hardware to run it. You could use any interface. And so, yeah, I ended up going back to Pro Tools 9, and I figured out how to edit. The thing about it is I was so used to the Reaper editing. Now it's like going back to Pro Tools. I love the way Pro Tools looks. I still do. I think it's the best looking DAW out there, but I had to learn how to edit the way I edit in Reaper in Pro Tools, and that took me a little while, but now I got it and I'm fine. But I mean, it's been, like 8 years of me being back in Pro Tools, but yeah. So that's that.
It's funny, man. Almost every pro, it's changed with like now like producers and a lot of pop music now, but I feel like almost every pro like, yep, that program.
Like, I love it, man. Yeah, I like it a lot. Yeah, to me, it's the best. I know they all do the same thing, and it's all about what you're comfortable with. But I feel like some people don't like Pro Tools. It's like people who don't like Apple.
Yeah,
like you don't really have a reason to not like it. You just don't like it because everyone else likes it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that might not be the case. Like, I don't know. People's complaints on it are that it's like, it's hard to do the things that they want to do, but it's like, it's not hard if you just learn how to do it, and sure, it might be easier to do that task in another DAW, which makes sense, and just use that other DAW, but you don't have to shit on mine because you like yours better.
By the time I get to it, like, it's probably like in the 7 phase, and I'm like new to all that world, and I think it definitely probably wasn't the easiest one to learn, like if that's like your first. And then at that time, like it just didn't seem good. Like I said, from just building from scratch in there, to me, like the MIDI wasn't too great. Again, it's just 7.
It's still not, I mean, I don't, that's probably
no delay like you were talking about, so it just felt like, well, if I just go here, like I won't complain no more. So I just went over there.
I mean, I intentionally don't do a lot of MIDI stuff because it's not easy. It's the routing's weird. It's like confusing, and it's, I prefer, if I'm going to make like synth pads or sounds, I prefer to either use guitars to make those sounds or I'll plug in like an actual like analog synth and like search around for a sound and like record it like I would a guitar. I just hate dealing with MIDI. My hate for dealing with MIDI might actually be because I don't like the way it is in Pro Tools, So you might be right about that. Yeah.
Let me ask you another thing I've struggled with during my little, if you want to call it, music career. How do I go about understanding compression?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because I feel like I still don't know what the hell I'm doing with that.
I actually understood it better when I got the hardware unit, to be honest. Yeah. Like, I mean, I thought I understood it, and then when I had the hardware unit, I'm like, I mean, it's more exaggerated. Okay. I feel like having the hardware unit, the plugins don't do compression the way that they're supposed to. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. Like, if I could buy more hardware, I think that's what I'm just going to be buying more compressors, because I feel like the EQs are fine, like in the plugins in the box, but I feel like even the best like hardware emulation plugins I have don't sound as cool as this very inexpensive hardware compressor that I have. That's a real compressor, like I can touch it.
Yeah.
And the thing about compression, that it's really simple. Most compressors all have the same things. We're gonna do like a little compression class. There's an input, there's an output, or like a makeup gain. Is an output is pretty much the same thing. Now this style of compressor is an 1176 style, which is like a really common and popular. It's got an attack, a release, and a ratio. And I'm probably gonna butcher the explanation, but the input the input knob is how much of your signal you're feeding into the compressor. That's also like your threshold. It's like how much of my, like if we're talking about a snare drum, the more you crank the input, the more snare you're feeding into the compressor, which means, if you're at like, you can pick the ratio like 4-to-1, 8-to-1, 12-to-1, 20-to-1, and that's just a matter of how much of the, it's 4 dB for every one like unit over that threshold you are, or 8 decibels of reduction for every, you know what I mean? That's like how much it's smashing. And so the attack and release, whenever you set the attack, that's how fast the compressor responds the moment the information hits the input. So like if you're talking about a snare, a very fast attack, it's like the split second in which the snare hits, it's going to start doing its thing. And the release is when the compressor releases itself off of the, the transient. And so like if you're dealing with a snare drum and it's very fast stuff, pop 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 kind of a thing, then you're going to want a really fast release so that it can rebound in time and hence compress the next signal. So it's kind of doing one of these things, because if it's going pop, 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 and your release is real slow, then your compressor is going to be kind of bouncing back after the next hit's already there. And it's going to create this weird pumping thing. So that's why if you hear like guys that are very experienced with compression, they know how to time the attack and release to the tempo of the song. And that's, now that I've had a piece of hardware that I can actually touch, I've been able to create that effect and feel it, because I feel like the hardware compressor is more organic and more it's more exaggerated, but it's more musical. Like you can do the same settings on the hardware and do the same settings on the plugin, and the plugin's going to sound, I don't know, it just doesn't sound as three-dimensional to me, is I guess the word I'm looking for. But that's all in all. I mean, that's a really horrible explanation, but that's really what it does.
It touched on things that I've heard before too, like a lot, like especially the last part. I was surprised because I don't remember his full name, but it's like JJP or JPB, John Paul. He's like a very famous mixer. I don't know if you use the Waves plugins, but like he's in the J section there.
Okay.
People who have, but I remember hearing an interview with him many years ago when Pensado's Place first started, and he starts talking similar to what you're talking about pretty much moving time through compression, and I was like, I've never heard, a lot of us are used to just being like, okay, it makes things louder. And I heard him talk like that, and I was like, oh, I don't know, like it was just like a whole nother world of like, I'd never even entered my mind.
Well, I think if you don't know what you're doing with it, then it'll be about making something louder, because usually when you feed something into it, it makes it louder. But you don't want to use that as a gauge for whether or not it's doing something, because most people perceive louder as better, right? I mean, that's why things have always progressively gotten louder over the years, and as far as like mixes goes,
and all that.
But in reality, when you turn the compressor on and you have it set up right, unless you're intentionally deciding that you want to use the compressor as to give you a louder signal, what I do is I stage the output or the makeup gain to where when I bypass the plugin, or if I turn the compressor off, that there's not a volume jump. So then it's more apparent what's happening. Like it's really easy to do it with the plugins. Like if you jack the input, and set your attack and release that whatever, and you move your output or your makeup gain down to where when you bypass it, it's the same volume as your track is with no compression. Then when you turn it on, you can really have a good appreciation for what's happening as the compressor is molding the attack of the transient, and what it's doing to the signal. You know what I mean?
AB in it and stuff.
Yeah,
for sure. I remember I used to do that a lot, and I just was thinking like, what the hell? It was just hard for me to tell. The these days I don't even focus too much on that as much as like let me just make songs and have fun.
That's what it's all about, man.
Do you master anything at all too, or no?
I do out of necessity. Yeah, because that's not something I have a huge love for. And when I have clients with budgets or when I pitch it to my clients and they're into the idea, I'll try to I have a guy that I go to that I like to have my mastering my stuff. But usually 80% of the time it's not the case and I have to do it. And so that's what kind of why I've acquired some of this stuff is to
I've always wondered, like, as someone, you know, makes music for himself, I'm like, I don't really want to pay people because I'm just doing it for me. It ain't even generating income. So I've always had a tough time finding out what the hell is the mastering process. You know, like I've seen different explanations. I know there's that famous book. Can't remember his name, Bob something. It's like a legendary mastering book. But and same thing when I ask people like in Klein's level, I usually get answers. It depends on the song, which is cool, but that doesn't help me.
Yeah. Well, to me, what mastering is, when I try to explain it to people, it's like I use like a recipe analogy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the band is bringing. I always like to talk about like baking, like cakes, right? So like the producer's role, if we're talking like in traditional terms, the producer's role is to look at your recipe and make sure that all the ingredients that you're about to put into this cake are appropriate and make adjustments to make the cake better if he sees fit, right? So then the band is bringing you the recipe they created, and you're saying, yeah, you know what? I think if you had a quarter cup more sugar, you know, maybe through like an extra egg white and maybe an extra tablespoon of oil, your cake's gonna turn out a lot more fluffy and not so boring. You know, maybe we'll throw some sprinkles in there, right? So that's the producer's role. Well, then the engineer's role is to, like, you know, you're physically mixing this cake in a bowl, it's making batter, right?
Yeah.
Well, then like you're, you know, and putting it into the oven and then giving you this baked thing that's in a semi-completed state. Well, now you could technically eat a cake that had no frosting and no decorations and whatnot, but it's not going to taste as good. So to me, the mixing engineer's job is to ice that cake, to make that cake look as nice as possible, but also taste better, you know? So like in the mixing world, it's like taking raw tracks. Hopefully the guy who made the recipe, the engineer, baked it properly, and so it's not burnt or there's nothing distorting, you know what I mean? Like the cake's in a very near complete state. It's got a good fluffiness. It's you know, no pieces broken off, anything like that. It's good. Well, now the mixing guy, he's icing that cake. You know, he's making it to where, hey, not only does this look good, but it's going to taste good. And that's the process of making sure that everything's balanced and you're putting reverbs and compression and you're making it to where the audience is going to hear it and enjoy it the most, right? Well, to me, the mastering guy, his job is to come in and like write the letters on the cake real nice, or like put the design on the cake if it's like a kid's birthday cake, and then put it into its container to then be handed off to anyone. Yeah. So it's like he's the final guy, and without him, you know, that cake's you're not gonna be able to take that cake anywhere. You know what I mean? Like with a mastering guy, his job is to make sure your mix translates everywhere, that it's gonna sound good in a car, it's gonna sound good in a headphone, it's gonna sound good in an iPhone, it's gonna sound good on a laptop. And his job is also to hide any errors that may have been overlooked by the other people that were involved. So in this case, like maybe the mix guy, you know, in our cake analogy, iced this cake really good, but there was an edge on the top that kind of just didn't get quite covered all the way. It's still like some yellow or brown poking through. Yeah. Well, he's a last resort of like smoothing that over. And, you know, he's kind of like the last fail safe. And so, and his job in that sense is also to make sure that it's loud enough, you know, and that it's consistent on all, you know, in all regards, as far as the bottom and the top. So that's really what the deal is. A lot of people, they think when they talk about mastering, they're actually talking about mixing. You know, when I hear people say, oh, our stuff got mastered by this guy, well, did it really get mastered by that guy, or did he mix it also? You know, that's really the thing. I think people don't know the difference between mixing and mastering. You know, the mixer is the most, to me, I mean, no offense to mastering people, the mixer is the most important person in the whole process. I feel like you could train a gorilla to record a band. I think anyone could record a band. I really feel like that. And the more experience your gorilla, the better. But like, I mean, anyone can record a band, you know, if the tones were set. I mean, not everyone can get good tones. I don't want people to see this and think like this guy's a fucking idiot. No, the process of hitting space bar on a computer, you know, and making sure the dudes are playing their instruments properly. Yeah, the basic almost anyone can do that. You know, but like, yes, it does take experienced ears to get tones and tune drums and make sure that, you know, if you had a dude that's really badass, like, you're going to get a better sounding recording than someone that was brand new, obviously. But anyone can record a band. Not everyone can mix a record. You know, that takes years of training to be able to do. And a lot of it is just understanding what to not do. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's, you know, with plugins, and so everyone's got a new plugin every day, you know, that people want to use everything on everything. And that's killing people's mixes, I think, you know.
I purposely, a lot of my friends in New York still get 10,000 plugins, like I said, every day. Hey, did you get the new this? It's usually synthesizers, because again, we're mostly producers.
That's a little different, yeah.
But I still, like, I don't even know how to use the last one I got. So yeah, I stopped getting stuff. I kind of made a list of like, this is everything I want. Got it, and that's it. And I just closed the door. And I'm like,
I mean, I'm kind of the same way. Like, unless I have like a rule, if I'm gonna buy, I'm not gonna buy something unless it's going to noticeably improve my sound by like more than 10%.
That's a good one.
That's like my rule. Like, unless something's solving a problem that I have every day, or it's going to improve my sound by like 10% or more, then I'm gonna buy it. I bought an EQ or a channel strip plugin the other day because when I put it on, it improved my mix by more than 10%. I feel like compared to what I had been using, and so I mean, I'm a huge fan of that particular plugin now, and so yeah, I mean, I will pull the trigger on some stuff, but I'm a little less quick to move on things like that, unless they come highly regarded by some dude that I really respect, and I know he's not getting paid to say that he likes it, and I've seen it in action, and I watched the demo, and I say, how does this stack up to what I'm already doing? And it's like, okay, maybe I'll buy it, but I'm trying not to buy stuff anymore. Also,
I have this one question, and then we'll get to the life ones, and we're good. I'm trying to think, how do I phrase this one? I think like my main interactions with you been like on Facebook, but I see like the words you choose and the posts you make, and you have this mindset that I feel like I've only become open to in maybe the last 2-ish years. Something along the lines of like, you know, like the power is yours. All you got to do is kind of like, you know, like you have to apply. You know, when you were talking about mentors the other day, you know, I don't even know the question I'm trying to ask, but basically like, how did you get this current like mindset that you have? Because like you're doing what I think a lot of people, like especially like me when we were younger, like, oh, we want to record and stuff, and like you're doing that as a living. And you know, like there's a bunch of other artist friends who like maybe don't believe in ourselves or whatever, you know. But like how did you get this current mindset to like, you're always thinking like, I don't know if different is the right word, but maybe entrepreneurial, you know, or whatever it is, you know?
I think yeah. Well, you know, there's a lot of stuff there, you know, there's a lot of, you know, that's a huge and good question. There's some inherent like genetic wiring, I feel. But I feel that everyone has that they just have trained through their upbringing or through their circumstances, they've trained it to turn off, right? But at some point for me, after high school, I got tired of struggling. You know, I don't like people that tell me what to do. I really don't. Like, it's a problem sometimes. Like,
No, I know.
I don't want to hear someone tell me what I should be doing. And you know, after I graduated high school, I went to cosmetology school, which means I learned how to like cut hair and color hair, and I was around a lot of chicks, and it was really awesome.
Yeah.
And you know, I learned a lot about myself when I was there after high school. It's like, because you're not going to get in trouble if you don't go, but you're wasting money. And this is preparing you to go get a job. And I found myself there, the way that the cosmetology school, and this is all pertinent to your question, so forgive me.
I find it super cool because I'm around, like, I don't know if you ever heard of Moxie Hair Salon, but I'm like, wow, I didn't expect this to come up here. So I'm around those girls a lot, and I'm like, so I've had 2 of them on this show. So
yeah, that's awesome.
So it's kind of cool.
Well, and I'll preface what I'm going to say by saying I have the utmost respect for people that do that, because it's hard. Yeah. It's hard on your back. It's hard on your arms. It's hard on everything. I mean, those girls get what's called hair splinters. You know,
you get those marks.
You'll actually get. You ever got a splinter? Like you rub a piece of wood the wrong way, and you got a splinter. That happens from hair. You know, like you actually get
turns into spots or marks. Because I remember asking her, and I think that's what she told me.
Well, I mean, it could if if they get infected, but also like you're dealing with like hair color, so that can stain your skin too. If you're because you're dealing with bleach. You're literally dealing with bleach. You're bleaching people's hair. It burns. But what I learned about myself there was I started to ask questions to people that were coming in, and I was getting answers that I wasn't okay with. And it concerned me towards the end, because when I came into that, I was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I was like, I'm gonna cut hair, you know. And towards the end of my school, I saw people who had graduated, maybe been working for a couple of years, come in, and there was a common trend between most of them, not all of them, but 75% of them. They didn't seem happy. And when I would ask them about their income, how much, you know, are you killing it? You know, they're like, they would complain, you know, about their money. They'd complain about their income. And, you know, to me, like, this was going to be my career. You know, I was going to school to do this. And everyone not everyone, but again, 75% of the people were not happy. And I noticed that, and it started to bother me. And so then I began researching and talking more, looking for answers, and realized, if you can ask your friends, there's a 75% burnout rate in that industry of people that graduate, go to school, get jobs, and don't make it past like 2 years, because
I've noticed it just from being around.
Yeah. So. And you're working Saturdays early.
Yeah.
You're nonstop. You don't have time to eat. And you're not killing it. I mean, you're making money. Like, they're going to make money, you know, 40K, 50K a year, some of them. But that wasn't to me, that wasn't a destination. Like, I realized real quickly for me to make the kind of money I wanted to make, I needed to own a salon.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, to me, owning a salon, I was just a dude in beauty school. It's like, I'm going to have to work all these years and get all this experience and make nothing. Or to me at the time, what seemed like for a guy that went to college to go work to make 40K, it's like I was working at the gas station making like 35. It's like, and I had no pressure on anything. And I, you know what I mean? Like, I was a clerk. You know, I worked at the it was a Diamond Shamrock and became a Valero. And, you know, it started to turn me off. And so I got confused, you know, and my parents, and I'm still getting to your question.
No, you good.
Yeah. My parents, you know, started wearing me out. You know what I mean? They're like, you know, we helped you pay, they paid like half my school. You know, we helped you go to school. You know, what are you doing? Like, you're still at this gas station. You're not pursuing this. Like, they started like pushing me, you know, like pushing me. And it pissed me off, you know, and I don't want people telling me what I shouldn't be doing. So I left, and I was homeless. You know, I filled my car stuff. I slept in my car on the side of the road. I stayed with Magnus for a few months. You know, that's when I started feeling that pain of, you know, I actually was at times looking for change on the ground so I could put gas in my car, you know, borrowing money from people in tears, you know, like asking people for money is the most uncomfortable feeling in the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's humiliating. And I felt that. And I said, I don't want to feel like this ever again. I don't. And I think I had been hanging on to this, playing in a band and like being this like free post high school, you know, just I'm gonna wake up whenever I want, do whatever I want, do, you know, freedom, I guess. But I realized that came at the expense of me being a loser, pretty much, you know. And so I remember I woke up one day at Magnus's house, you know, having, you know, again scraping around for change, and I said, I need to find a job. I just need to find a job, like a real job. And my dad had been selling cars for years. My dad was kind of like me. He was, you know, he had no college like formal college education. He was like a line cook in restaurants, and he got a job selling cars and made killer money. You know, I saw what it did for our family when he was selling cars. You know, we stopped living in an apartment. We got a house. They started buying nicer cars. We had better Christmases. You know, like we just were making more money. Like, yeah. So I saw what it did, and you know, I saw the way he talked about it, and I said, I bet I could do that. And so I pulled out a newspaper, and I found an ad for a job that said they would pay me $3,000 a month to learn how to sell cars. For like the first 3 months, they would paid training $3,000 a month. Yeah. And I was like, holy shit, like that's what I need to do. So I still look like a piece of shit. You know, I had like the scene hair with like covered my eye with the bleach, and I had no business clothes. Well, I borrowed clothes from friends, wrinkled as fuck. And I walked in, and they gave me a chance. You know, I thank God for those people, man. Like Fiesta Dodge, you know, over on Bandera, and they you know, they were hillbilly, you know, types, like country folks. They were selling trucks, pickups, you know, work trucks to work people. That was the last spot I should have ever been, but they let me in, and some of those guys I'm still friends with today. But yeah, man, they gave me a chance, and when I got in the car business, that was kind of what helped. I went from having a disgust against not having money to having a hunger to make money, because for some reason, people that sell cars, that's the culture there. You're hungry, you know, you're hungry for money. You're hungry to close deals, and it's fast. You know, it's never a dull moment. You're on the phone, you're prospecting, you're passing out business cards. Your server at your restaurant, hey, I sell cars, come see me. Hey, do you know anyone looking for a car? It's an entrepreneurial. They teach you how to be an entrepreneur within the confines of that work atmosphere, because you don't clock in and clock out. You're expected to be there at a certain time, but you're not getting paid by the hour. You're getting paid by commission. So if you're not selling anything, you're not making any money. And so I was getting paid to learn. So I got my first check. I went and got an apartment, and I bought myself some nicer clothes. Then I got my next check, you know, again, paid my rent for the next month, got myself some nicer clothes. And I started really liking what I was doing, selling cars. And, but I was still lost in my brain. You know, I realized selling cars that this was the direction I wanted to be going. Like I liked this free spirited, like, hey, I'm going to stand out here and I'm going to meet someone. I'm going to show them a product. I'm going to be nice to them. I'm going to sell them. I'm going to do some paperwork, and then I'm going to get a commission. Like, to me, that was a really cool situation. And I really fell in love with it. Excuse me. And shortly after, I ended up, I was struggling, like I mentioned, because the kind of guy that I was and the kind of guy they were, just fundamentally, I mean, they were kind of hillbillyish. They were cowboys. They had different senses of humor than I did. Like, it got to the point, then I realized I didn't really love Dodge, the Dodge product. Like I started to struggle a little bit. Like, I liked what I was doing, but I knew this wasn't the right fit for me. So mentally I started to check out. I kind of got what I needed to get out of the situation. And then I found a better one. I got hired at a Toyota store, and I love Toyota. I grew up with Toyotas. I trust Toyotas. I like the way the Toyotas looked. I like the way they felt. The quality is great. I still that's all I drive is Toyotas. And I started killing it at Toyota. I think I made $15,000 in my first 2 months, selling Toyotas. I was murdering it. And to me, that was one of the most favorite times of my life. My first few months at that Toyota store, just being just carefree, just like pretty much every day I was selling a car. It was just one of the coolest times of my life. Bought my first truck. That's when I was making all that money buying the watches and started buying all that stuff. Well, around that time, I met a guy. It was a funny story. I've told it so many times, but you may not have heard it. There was a guy, I was there, I had maybe been there 6 months, 8 months, and there's a guy that pulls up in a $90,000 Lexus, literally like an almost $100,000 car, and I recognized it. I was like, whoa. He gets out of this car, he's got these like $400 sunglasses on, and he asked for a manager. And I was like, is everything okay? Can I help you with something? He goes, oh, I'm here for a job interview. And I was like, it's like, what the hell is a fucking guy in a $100,000 car coming to work here?
You got to pay for it somehow.
Yeah. And I was like, okay. So anyways, a few days later, I see this guy out in the lot. They hired him.
Yeah.
And he was older than me, about my dad's age, roughly. And, my dad is, I don't know what, like 20 years older than me, 22, 23 years older than me, 26 years older than me. Wow. And he's roughly around my dad's age. And he asked me a couple questions, like technical questions about paperwork and stuff. And I walked him inside and showed him how to do it, and answered his questions, and we walked back out, and he looked at me and he said, what are you doing here? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, like, what's your story? Like, what brought you here? And I told him, I don't know what provoked me to give him this answer, but I said, this is really how I felt. I said, when I wake up in the morning, I feel like I'm meant for something more than what I am. I really do. And I feel like I'm meant to be a millionaire. I feel like at some point in my life, I'm going to be a millionaire, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. And my dad always told me that the wealthiest people in the world are in sales in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And I was always told that selling cars is one of the hardest things that you can do. So in my mind, I feel like if I could get good at selling cars, then I could be good at selling anything. And he was like, that's one of the best answers I've ever heard for that question. And he's like, what are your goals? And I said, say what? And he was like, what do you want out of life? And I said, I don't know. To make money, to be a millionaire. He goes, well, if you had $1 million right now, what would you do with it? And I was like, and that was the beginning of that mindset that you're talking about, was understanding goals. That's the longest answer to get to that short answer, but that's really what it is. So this guy sat me down, and he said, I want you to write down 5 things in your life that you have now that you don't want and write down 5 things in your life now that you don't have that you do want. So I wrote down, I wanted to have my own car, have my own vehicle, like a nice car. I was driving like a piece of shit at the time. And I wanted to have my own house. I wanted to be married to a hot chick. I wanted to have my own recording studio. I had already been dabbling with it at that point. And, I wanted to be a millionaire. I wanted to have $1 million in the bank. And, the things I didn't want debt. I was becoming overweight at the time. I didn't want that fat, I wanted to lose weight. And, within 2 years, I had crossed everything off that list except $1 million. I'm still working towards that. But so the reality of that is that thinking there's several facets to the whole thing that you're talking about, because it's not just having a positive mental attitude, because that doesn't last. Being positive isn't always realistic, because life isn't always perfect, right? So it's hard to stay positive all the time. But if you have goals, if you have written goals, like you have wrote them down on paper and you look at them, it kind of doesn't matter, because you're always working towards them. So it's easier to remain positive when you're working towards something greater than what you have now. And so that's kind of the first answer. The second answer is realizing that you have control over your life. Like most people, the average person handles life as it happens to them. What I mean by that is, if you lost your job, it's usually a surprise, or you've done something to lose your job.
Yeah.
You go out, you look, and you take the next thing that comes to you. That's not a prime. There's no choice. That's not the way it's supposed to be, but that's the way most people do it, right? You're kind of I liken it to walking around in the dark trying to find a light switch, except you don't really even understand you're trying to find a light switch.
Yeah.
You're just walking around in the dark, and if you happen to bump your head on something and flip it and a light turns on, you're like, oh, what? But that's what people do. Majority of 80% of the people in this world, or maybe more, maybe 85-90% of the people in this world don't understand that you have control over your life. There's a combination of things. I don't want to say that I don't believe in white privilege, because I do. I believe that that's a thing. I do believe that there is a systematic oppression towards people of color. I live in San Antonio. I don't feel like we have it as bad here as other places, because San Antonio is a kind of a melting pot of everything, So fortunately, regionally, we're predominantly brown city. I'm half Mexican. I can tell you're probably
Puerto Rican.
Yeah. So we don't have to deal with that as much as like other parts of the country do. Right. But it is a real thing. However, I will say this. Despite that, it doesn't change the fact that people can control their lives. Just because someone grew up in the hood does not mean they cannot be successful. This is a free country, and anything can happen for anyone if they're willing to work for it and they're willing to try hard enough, and they write down goals and they're going to pursue them in the same way. And that kind of brings me to the next facet of this answer, which is something that is called the law of attraction. Which I'm sure you've heard that term before. And so when you realize that you can control your life, and in case I'm not clear what that means again, is that this life is meant to be designed. Okay. I'm proof of that. I grew up in a low income household with nothing. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm like successful or anything, but I've done some stuff that people would say that would warrant that, I guess.
Yeah.
But everything is designable. So if you don't like how much money you're making, what's stopping you from making more money? And then if the answer is an excuse, then there needs to be a mindset shift. That's the point, is that you can do anything you want. If you wanted to go make more money right now, if you said, Cliff, dude, I want to make $100,000 in the year of 2018. All right, dude, let's do it. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, as long as you're willing to do whatever it takes. But that's the problem, is that most people who are living in circumstances that they are not okay with are not willing to do the things that it takes to change them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no.
And so what I mean by that is that it's a life by design, but fuck, man, you gotta work for the design. He's not gonna say, oh man, hey, you know what? Tomorrow I'm gonna decide that I'm gonna be a millionaire and just sit on your couch and eat fucking Pringles and watch Netflix and think that shit's gonna happen. Yeah. It takes radical change mentally and radical change in behavior. And that's the thing that I feel like as a result of my mentorship from the gentleman that I told you about. His name's Mitch Creel. And I still, my best friend, I talk to him multiple times a week. I was at his house yesterday. He's still a very big part of my life. And is that this is what drilled this into my head, is the day that we met and we had that conversation, he said, I want to help you. I want to help you cross these things off this paper. Are you willing to do whatever it takes? And I said, yes. And he said, I need you to buy this book and read it, like ASAP. And I said, okay, what's it called? And he told me. The next day, we were sitting outside at the lot, and I asked him a question, and he looked at me. He didn't answer my question. He goes, you didn't buy the book. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, if you would have bought the book, you wouldn't be asking me that question right now. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. And he goes, don't apologize. He said, you said you were willing to do whatever it takes. Well, if I told you to go buy a book and you didn't go buy it, then you're not willing to do whatever it takes. He held me accountable, is really what it was. Then I realized this guy's serious, and I like everything he's saying, and I trust him. I had no reason not to trust him. So I went and bought the book, read. I couldn't stop reading the book, read about half of it. And I felt like I found like if you ever imagine like opening a jar out of an ocean and finding like Dead Sea Scrolls and like reading like information that like no other man has ever seen, and you're like, oh my God, like I found like a holy grail of like some secret shit that like no one else knows, and now I have power. Amplify that by 1,000,000, and that's how I felt. And I felt like I was born to read that book. And I read the whole thing in 2 days, and then I read it again. And people at work saw what happened, and they got concerned. So I had somebody ask me if I was on drugs, because I became a different person. I became the guy that you know now. And it was as a result of being fed what I had been looking for without knowing I was looking for it in that book, but then having somebody that was holding me accountable and pressing me. And I responded to everything. I never backed down from his challenges. I never ignored the things he said. It became a goal to smash his little obstacles that he was setting in front of me. And what's funny is he told me, he said in the 20 years that he had been like mentoring people, he had only had maybe one other person in that time actually do the things that he had asked, which tells me that he was searching 20 years to find somebody that was willing to do the things that he asked. And what's happened? I accomplished all my goals in 2 years. He said other people, they stop, they get lazy, or they stop wanting someone to test them. They stop wanting the challenge, or they just lose interest. And I'll tell you, it's been 11 years now since that event happened for me, or this sequence of events happened for me. And in that 11 years, I've had people like yourself come to me and say, you know, can you help me? The way that I asked Mitch to help me. And how many of them have actually done what I've said? Maybe 2. And how many of them actually kept up with it? None. You know, I had a girl the other day hit me up, and she said, I'm desperate to change. I'll do anything and everything it takes to change. And I need help, you know, and I want what you're offering. I said, I'll tell you the same thing I tell everyone else. I was like, if I'm going to help you, the same thing Mitch told me. You got to, 1, trust me. Number 2, if I tell you to do something, I need you to do it. If you're wishy-washy about it, then I'm done. So told her the same thing. She started. I haven't heard from her in like 2 weeks. It's just people aren't willing to do whatever it takes, man. You know, is really what it boils down to. So the third, the law of attraction, you know, and this is pretty much in other terms, the way that book has impacted my life is it taught me like a fundamental, like gravity. You know, if you jump off a building, you're going to die, right? Well, the same way you feel about that, you should understand that if you put your mind towards something, it's going to happen. You know, the way that I'm working towards my million, you know, the way that the ideas pop into my head all the time that I'm like, man, like if I wasn't thinking about my million, I wouldn't have thought of that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they'll manifest them. Things manifest themselves when you're working towards stuff. And the only way I can put it is it's like magic. You know, it's like if you want, you know, a hot girlfriend. Do you have a girlfriend?
Nope.
All right. So if you wanted one, you'd want her to be super hot, right?
That was definitely the thing when I was young. Really, I wanted the hot girlfriend, but I wanted the relationship, you know, the one. Yeah. You know?
Oh, yeah, obviously, yeah. So you want a hot girl that had substance. Yeah, you know? Yeah. So then you ask yourself, if this were me, right? Knowing what I know now, this is what I would ask myself. Am I doing the things that I need to do to attract the kind of girl that I want? What does that mean? Right? So you find examples. There's a formula. Okay. You find a mentor in that realm. And I don't mean that in a weird way. I mean that like when I think of like dudes that are like getting any girl they want and they're badass and like those girls are all over them. Think about guys like Justin Bieber, like David Beckham, or Justin Timberlake, or like
famous celebrities.
Like, well, guys like that. But the concept of those guys, right? And when you look at all those guys, and when you look at any dude that has a hot chick, they all have similar qualities. They're all well dressed by female standards. It's cool to dress. I mean, I have a shoe collection. It's cool to dress cool for yourself. But there's another thing to dress cool to impress chicks. That's 2 different things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, haircuts, facial hair, like you need to change. If you're not getting what you want, you got to understand why. You know what I mean? And this is a very superficial example, but it hopefully paints the picture.
No, I get it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're not getting what you want, you have to change behaviors. You have to change the patterns in order to get a different result.
It's like reverse engineering, kind of.
I mean, yeah, I'm the master at that by now. You know what I mean? If I want something, or if I want a skill, or if I want a tangible something, I'm going to talk to people that have what I want and pick their brain until I understand what they're doing to a T, you know? And the whole dating thing is funny to me because I don't have to do it, obviously, but I feel like there's books to be written about that, because I feel like there's guys out there that like have no clue how to do it, and there's formulas to it. Because I almost like want to write a book about it, because it's so interesting to me, because I see the things that work for dudes, and it's so stupid, but it's so perfect at the same time that it works. And it's just it's interesting to me. But that's a different subject. But the fact, if it's more money, right? Like how desperate are you? When I had my podcast, I had a segment called Burning Desire, right? And that burning desires is a feeling in the pit of your stomach that says, do you have a dog?
Yeah, I got two.
Okay. How much do you love your dogs?
I would say a lot.
Like on a 1 to 10 scale.
I mean, damn, I want to say 10, but like technically they weren't my dog. Like I would never get a dog. But I live with my sister. They're her dogs. I became the primary caretaker. So like I feel like I care about them more than she does.
Do you have any siblings?
If you mean younger, no. Older, yeah. My sister, brother, but they're all like 15 plus years. I was kind of like late.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're not super close to them?
The one I live with, sure, I have no choice.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to make this make sense to you.
No,
but
for sure.
Okay, so let's just say the dogs. Say the dogs were a 10 for you, right?
Yeah.
Say it's 2 a.m. and you smell smoke.
Yeah.
And you realize your fucking house is on fire. That sense of urgency in your stomach to go get your dogs and pull them out of the house.
Yeah.
There's something that happens when you realize those dogs are going to get scorched to death and die unless you save them. That sense is something that you have to bottle up and understand how to apply to your goals. It's almost like an adrenaline rush of urgency to attack something. And if you aren't approaching your goals with that sense, then they're not going to happen. And it's called a burning desire. It's like you're going to get hit by a train unless you step off that track. And the train, by the way, is 2 feet from you right now. So jump.
Yeah.
Like if you're not attacking your goals with that kind of intensity, then it's not going to happen, because the law of attraction doesn't work unless you're approaching it with that insane sense of urgency. Because if you're not, I feel like, not to get religious, but like if we're going to talk about the universe and stuff, the universe gives to you what you're willing to like die for.
Get in what you put out, son.
Right. So if you're putting in 50%, it might be a 50% chance that it happens. But if you're given 100%, then you're going to get 100%. And I mean that 100. I mean that with all my life. That's truth, And so those concepts have been proven in my life to work. This studio is a manifestation of that. This device that's in front of you right now, this Kemper, is a manifestation of that. It just happened for me. 2 months ago, I said, I'm going to get a Kemper. That thing is like $1,700, dude.
Damn.
And I had $1,700 to sit around and blow on a Kemper. Fuck no, I didn't have it. But I said, I'm going to get it. And I did. I got it.
Yeah.
And it's fine, and I love it. But every time I say I'm going to do something, I get it. It happens. It's never failed. I've gotten everything I want in life since I've had this change. And the thing that I realized, and I'm being transparent with you, is like this million. The million to me sometimes is unbelievable, which has made it hard for me. Like I believe it, but then sometimes I don't. Sometimes I question whether I need it. It's like, could I live the life I wanted to live if I had $200,000 in the bank? Maybe, like, could I live the life that I want to live if I had, $100,000 in the bank? Maybe, but that's why it's not happening for me. It's because I'm not 100%ing it. You know what I mean? I'm like 50-40%ing it. But that 50-40% has kept me on my toes to create ideas that I would not have thought of, like I mentioned earlier, had I not been thinking about it. So I'm kind of getting like 40% from that particular goal, but everything else has already happened, you know? So that's, I mean, I hope that kind of answers your question a little bit. It's a combination of, like, if I want to rephrase everything I said, is you have to understand that you can flip the light on. Number one, this life, you got to flip the light on of your life. Understand you're not wandering in the dark. There's a light, turn it on and start planning where you want to walk. You know, that's like step one. Once you make that decision, then you have to plan where you want to walk. Where do you want? I'm using analogies here, but like, write down your goals, figure out what you want from this life, write them down. And then number three, massive action, you know, massive, burning, intense action to accomplish those things. And what does that look like? It means giving up stuff. It really does. If you really love watching ESPN every day, it almost means you need to stop doing the thing that you love. TV. And it almost means that you need to give up the unnecessary things that you enjoy in life until you get what you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
And Dave there's a guy I respect named Dave Ramsey that runs a radio show. He writes a lot of books and stuff. He says, I'm going to poorly quote him, in order to live like no one else, you have to live like no one else. And do you understand what that means? Yeah. So in order to get the things that you want, you need to do the things no one else is doing. I haven't had TV in years. Yeah. I don't even really even turn my TV on. I don't know. I can't tell you anything about Game of Thrones. I can't tell you about Breaking Bad. I have a PlayStation 4, but I haven't turned it on in 2 years. I mean, I don't know about Call of Duty or I don't know about any of that stuff. You know what I mean? The only reason I'm in here working in my studio is because it's my business. You know what I mean? And people perceive this as fun. To me, I don't look at it as fun. I look at it as work.
Yeah.
You know, but it is the idea is fun that I get to have a creative job. You know what I mean? It can be fun. I'll say that, but yeah, like, there's sacrifices, man. Like, I've done things to keep the studio open, you know, that I'm, you know, I wouldn't say I'm not proud of, but like, I've driven pizzas, you know, I've done Uber driving, you know, like I've done, you know, I'll go mow, you know, in the past I've mowed lawns. I've, you know, helped out at bars, you know, run the door. Like, I've ran sound live. Like, I've done a lot. I do a lot of things, or I have done a lot of things in the past to make sure that I'm staying on track to live the life I want to live. You know what I mean? Like, it's not easy.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It takes sacrifice. You know, it takes being willing to give up, to be willing to give up things that you enjoy to get the things that you want the most. And the thing is, if you're not willing to give up those things, then you don't want it bad enough. And that's what I believe. You know, it's like when people talk about losing weight, this is the classic scenario. Man, I'm so disgusted with being fat and I want to lose weight. Okay, well then stop eating Tex-Mex and fucking chips and salsa and breakfast tacos. Oh, I can't do that. Okay, then then you don't want it. You don't want it, because if you really wanted it, you would do it.
Yeah. Like, I know for me with the weight thing, like, I've actually, when I really did want, I actually lost a lot of weight already, you know, like, but now I know
you commit.
Yeah, but now I know, like, I'm really passionate about, like, making these things. Even I don't know why, I just like doing these things, you know. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, I live a heavy, what's the word, sedentary, right? When we sit a lot. Mm-hmm. I live that right now, and I've kind of done that in, you know, preference of, like, well, working out or something. And I'm like, well, I know I've done it before, and I know when I really want it, I'll get it back, you know. And I've started taking steps to that in preparation for when it is time for me. But yeah, prioritize what we really want, you know.
Right.
But But yeah, that was a really good answer. Like, oh, you didn't give me the book title. You only alluded to it.
Are you trying to get that book title?
Why not?
Nah.
Or is it secret?
No. Oh man, secret. I don't know. Are you ready for the book title?
Why not? Why not?
No. The book is called Think and Grow Rich.
Okay.
By Napoleon Hill, and it was written in the 1930s.
Oh man, OG book. I want to say I feel like I've heard that title from somewhere.
You probably have, because any successful person in the history of mankind gives that book credit. And I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
The wealthiest people in the world, they credit that book for part of their success, or at least books like it. You know, that's not the only one, but that's the best one in my opinion.
I was hearing today. I won't even remember the interviews, but yeah, Warren Buffett has a book too that he credits. Was one of his big hits. He says, "Oh yeah, my biggest investment. People expect the company," and it was like this book and a certain mentor that he had. You know, like those. I mean,
that's what it is, man. It's like you can give a man a fish or teach a man to fish.
Yeah,
and it's like people that win the lottery, they're either dead or broke in years. You know, but if someone learns the fundamentals, reads the books, feeds their mind, then the possibilities are limitless, because you have to have a certain maturity to be able to get the things that you want.
For sure. Do you, because I know you working on stuff, and you gave me that answer. Do you have time for the life questions?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. The first one is new. I just kind of heard it today, so I figured it'd be a good one to ask people. The rest of them I kind of have memorized. All right. And I feel like you've kind of talked about it in the last one, but what is the one thing you believe that other people think is crazy?
One thing I believe that other people think is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I think I kind of touched on it a little bit. And I don't think that people really think it's crazy, but I think if we switch the word crazy for like unbelievable, which essentially may be similar, I think it's the law of attraction, because it sounds hokey. So when I've tried to have serious conversations with like my scholarly philosophical friends that are very political and, you know, into like these world events and, you know, all this stuff, and I say like, it's fine, like you believe all that, but to me, I know I can do anything I want. They think that it's like I get patronized almost, like it's like I'm stupid, or like it's hokey, and it's, you know, it's the law of attraction. It's like someone said, so you're saying, when we were talking about this, so you're saying that all I have to do is just think about being rich, and then tomorrow I'm gonna have money in my bank. Well, no, but yeah, you know, no. The short answer is no. You can't. It's not black and white like that. You can't just say that. But yes, if I want to have $100,000, if I want to make $100,000 next year, and I'm dead set on making $100,000 next year, and I have no excuses, and I'm willing to do anything and everything it takes to make $100,000 next year, I'll make $100,000 next year. Me, Clifton.
Yeah.
You know, that's how it works. Like it's a sequence, you know, it's Tony Robbins like made a little chart out of it, and I'll butcher the chart, but you start with, you know, it's an action which fuels momentum, which fuels results, which fuels belief, which fuels more action. Okay. So if you have the belief, it'll drive you to action. And if you take action, you'll build momentum. And if you build momentum, that yields results, which then further fuels your belief. Right?
Yeah.
So
now
you have to
yourself it works.
You have to start with a belief that you can do something. Because if you doubt you can do something, you're going to give up the moment it gets tough. Which it will get tough. It always does. So if you have a belief that you can, and you back that belief with action, then you're going to develop momentum inevitably, because action fuels momentum. Because if with no action, there's no momentum. Like if you ever question yourself, why is this not happening for me? Then you're not doing enough. And if you're not doing enough, you got to question your belief, right? Because if you believe and you're doing this stuff, you're gonna build some momentum, which is gonna yield some results. I'm saying it like this because it's a 4-square chart.
Yeah.
You know, so that's probably the short answer is the law of attraction. You know, just the whole concept of it in general is like they're also the people that don't believe in that thing, in that concept or that belief, also tend to be extremely pessimistic. They say that they're real, like, oh, I'm just being real, like I'm just honest and I'm not trying to fabricate my reality. And it's like, well, I am, for better or worse, am fabricating my reality, but it's working. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, does that make sense? The
other way sounds like settling.
Well, yeah. Like, I mean, it's like you're believing your excuses. You know?
Yeah.
So the thing that it boils down to, not to get sidetracked, is a lot of the people that don't believe in the law of attraction have this like inherent structure that they followed in their life and are maybe not okay with admitting that they followed a template and aren't happy with it. You know, so it's like, hey, I'm just being real. Oh, I don't need a lot of money. Well, if you had more, would you be happier? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, not to say that money is the answer to everything, because it isn't. But I know that if I could go right now, take a trip to Japan and not blink an eye, there's a liberation to that.
Yeah.
You know? Or if I could put my son in any school in the city, that would make me sleep a little better at night. You know? So yeah, I mean, money is important. And I know I got kind of sidetracked there, but it's a lot of people that are in maybe like in not the best situations and just making excuses for their position and defending it at the same time, I guess, is kind of what I'm saying. But yeah, to answer your question, I believe law of attraction.
All right. What is the, and again, we've also touched on this a lot, so I feel like I got some of it, but the normal question I ask here is, what is your goal in life?
Oh man. Yeah, my goal in life is to give, you know, to other people, you know, is to be when I die, I want there to be an Alamo Dome sized amount of people at my funeral. And I want every single one of those people to say, you know, Clifton touched my life in this way that was meaningful, and I'm here to pay my respects to him. I want to be a difference maker, and when this thing is all said and done for me, I want to know that I made an impact on as many people's lives as I could. That to me is what drives me. The way that I feel about Steve Jobs, and the way that, you know, I feel about like my buddy Mitch that helped me, is the way that I want to be for people. You know, that's what really drives me.
Oh, why? Because it sounds like when you take the answer, like, yeah, so you want to be in service of people, like to right, bring them up, lift them. Is it because it was done for you that you would want to do it? All right. Yeah, because I was like, well, where would that come from initially? Yeah. But is it because it changed your life? So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, yeah. I mean, it to me, I know where I was before I had help. And if anyone hints to me that they were wanting similar kind of guidance, I want to be there for them, you know? But it's under the same premise that I can't hold anyone's hand through anything. I can show you where the light switch is, but if you don't want to go flip it, I can, and I'm sorry, you know?
Yeah.
That's what it is for me.
All right. Who do you have compassion for?
Compassion. Who do I have compassion for? Like anyone?
Yeah. I have like a whole paragraph of defining that, but I mean, it's your question. You take it where you need to go with it.
Let me ask you this then, before I answer. How do you personally define compassion?
This line of questioning comes from a self-talk I used to do meditation, and in this part, I would just kind of think of the people in my life and like was kind of like well wishing them, you know. So I guess for me, probably people I care, maybe the people I love, family, you know.
Or the word itself, though, how do you personally define that word compassion?
Oh my gosh, like I feel like I would Google search.
Well, yeah, but I know. We all, because I feel like everyone has like a very loose term. Like for me, like compassion is like.
That's why I'm struggling to answer it.
Like if I see, like for me, I'm not an evil person. You can probably tell. But I do not have compassion for a lot of homeless people.
Okay.
That my wife hates that.
You know what's the default answer for most people when I ask them, especially because I like to ask them, people I meet brand new, especially if it was like instead of small talk, I like to bring up real stuff. That's the number one thing I feel like because a lot of people don't ask themselves these things. So
they say homeless people?
Like, yeah, like because they just need an answer. And I think that's like a politically correct answer.
See, I think, and again, I don't want to, I'm looking at the camera because I want to make eye contact with whoever that might watch this. Like, I'm not an evil person. Hopefully that you can tell that by talking to me. I'm the opposite of that. But I think the idea, because I was there and I came from it, and I grew up in a household with addicts that came and grew from it, that I can't sympathize, or I can't for people that beg. It's just like, I understand. Yes, everyone, whether it might be, everyone is a product of their decisions, and everyone is paying, every decision that you make, for better or worse, it's like karma, it's consequences. If you lie, you might not get caught, but you've planted a dark seed out there that's going to reap itself somehow. Excuse me. And I feel not every homeless person is a bad person. Now, I'm not saying that any of them are bad, but I'm saying they are living the consequences of the decisions that they've made. Not all of them. Again, there's some that are veterans that came back with PTSD, that served our country, that for whatever reason, their spouse left them. They have mental problems and they could not hold down a job. And they're now, were on the streets, and then they got hooked on drugs. And like, I'm not talking about those people. Like, that's not a situation that's good for anyone. And I have compassion, I guess, for those people.
Yeah.
But I saw a guy that was wearing that looked like he was the drummer of some local band today, begging for change with a chick sitting down. Like, come on, dude. Like, you're healthy. You have lip piercing. You got gauges. How'd you,
afford that? Yeah.
Go take that shit out of your face. Go to Goodwill. Make this the last day you do that. Take your profits, go to Goodwill, buy yourself some clothes, and go interview for a job. Lie about an address and get yourself a job. Go flip a burger at McDonald's. Do anything to get yourself out of the situation you're in. There is even people with felonies can go fucking work in the oil field. There's no excuse. I know dudes that were felons that sold cars, making 6 figures, that were felons. So I don't have any compassion. So don't have compassion for them.
Yeah, that was the opposite. That was a very Michael Jordan answer. He's given that same answer.
But the people that I do sympathize for,
so you're interpreting compassion as something.
I guess maybe that's the mistake. Okay.
Or maybe it's not.
I don't know. I don't know. Okay.
But you can take the question as you want it. Yeah.
Single moms.
Okay.
I have compassion for single moms. I stay home with my son and I'm by myself when my wife's at work, and I know how hard it is. And I couldn't imagine not having her come home to help me. And there are some mothers, some women that have small children that are working and going to college and trying to do something better for themselves. And I have compassion for them. I think single moms are you know, I have compassion for you know, underprivileged black children, you know, that are growing up in situations that are less than ideal. Maybe, you know, projects, maybe drug addict parents, maybe, you know, because I look at them and I say, like, you know, I don't, not that I look at them, but when I think of them, because they're out there, like, I think like two things are going to happen. You're going to become a product of this and you're going to buy into it, or you're going to learn from it and you're going to be the opposite, and you're going to be what you're going to be for your family, what wasn't for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I have compassion for them.
Yeah, I know some single moms right now. One who did it, she like San Antonio Art Institute, she did that, became a graphic designer like while she had her kid. I have one right now who did the school thing, the whatever that word is. Like, since she's working right now as apprentice and build herself up.
Yeah.
And yeah, my mom was one too. She raised 3 of us.
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
She wasn't able to do the college, only 1 year, but yeah, she did it while in New York and stuff. So I mean, it was good.
Hell yeah.
3 things you're thankful for in life. Doesn't have to be actual things. Like
Mish,
people.
You know, my mentor.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that I live in a country that allows me to do what I do, and I don't have to, you know, have some kind of like government of oppression that's telling me I need to go serve or something, you know, like
1 year mandatory.
Israel, yeah, something like that, you know. That's probably be the second. And I don't know, the third, give me a second, because this is important. I don't know. I guess I'm thankful that I don't know, that I have a good life, you know, that I have a beautiful wife and a genius son, and I get to, you know, do something cool for income, and I get to stay home with my son. I'm extremely thankful for that. You know, I get to be the primary voice in his life in these extremely formative years. Yeah, I'm not starving or anything like that, you know, like that's I'm thankful for that, you
know. One person you would want to forgive you, and vice versa, and if you can say why. Like, one person you would want to forgive and one person you would want to forgive you, and if you can say why, then why. Yeah. If not.
For me, I mean, yeah, my mom, I would love to try and forgive my mom. You know, she was dealing with a lot from my dad, who was a, you know, substance abuser and alcoholic for a long time before he cleaned up. And you know, after the fact, you know, she wasn't the easiest to be around. She was, you know, abusive verbally and sometimes physically, you know, with me and my brother. And I didn't realize how bad that had affected me until I had my son. Until now, he's talking, and I think back to, you know, my childhood and some of the traumatic experiences that I had, and I couldn't imagine treating my son like that. So there's some definite, you know, scar tissue there as far as that's concerned, that I haven't been able to let go of, that I'm trying to figure out how to let go of. To forgive me, you know, I like to think that I have not wronged a lot of people. In fact, I do everything in my life to not wrong people. I'm after the opposite. But maybe my wife. Let's say my wife, forgive me because I'm not perfect, even to her, not that I have done anything wrong, but, I've taken some of her qualities for granted, and she puts up with a lot in the way that I am, because a lot of stuff that I've said today like might sound good, it might sound cool, but when you're knee deep in it the way she is, with me in the trenches, it's not fun and games. I've done some fucking crazy shit, man. Like, I borrowed $6,000 from some people one time to make food trucks. Like, when you're an entrepreneur and you think you can conquer the world and you're invincible, the way that I am, I try anything, but I've never let her down. But fuck, man, she's stood by me the whole time and dealt with it, and I commend her for that. But yeah, I mean, not that she's upset at me or anything, but I would hope that she would forgive me for the bumpy ride. I guess
it's not the easiest.
Yeah.
Where you see yourself in 3 years?
Ooh, right now I'm really, really focused on the studio. That's something that studio for me is like my first child, and now it's like a teenager, right? It's like, it doesn't need me, but it needs me. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I need it. I don't need it, but I need it. Okay. You know what I mean? We have a weird relationship, and
that's probably where I am with music.
Yeah, it's strange, man. And so like, I've been like mentoring it a lot. Like I've been here like in the studio, like we've been bonding a lot, and I've been loving it. I've been feeding it, and I've been doing a lot with it. And so I'd like to see the studio maybe in a more elevated fashion in the next 3 years. I'd like to have a little more cushion in my bank. Like I said, I'm not starving or anything, and I'm not like hurting. My bills are paid, but if my fridge and my AC, both decided to die at the same time, I'd be fucked. Yeah. By the way, a fridge is like $2,000 and an AC is like $6,000. So
ACs are crazy.
Like, I mean, I think about that, quite a bit. That right now is kind of like a fear thing that's kind of keeping me on my toes. Like, my house is now 10 years old. I had this house built for me, and it was brand new. Like, I got to pick the location and watch the slab go down and everything. And so, I don't know how long ACs last, but I'm like, someday I'm gonna have to, if I'm still living here, I hadn't sold the house, and that AC is gonna go out someday. And I'm not trying to put that in the universe or anything. Like, I don't want it to happen, but I'm just like thinking like realistically, like, yeah, like I'm not trying to like wish that on myself, because the law of attraction works like that, dude. Yeah. Like, if you're thinking about getting a fucking wreck all the time, you're gonna get into a wreck. Like, it's the opposite. The opposite's the same. Like if you were too worried about something, that's gonna happen.
My that best friend I mentioned, like, I have this conversation with him all the time, the life conversation. And he told me, like, dude, the minute I stopped looking at my bank account and worrying about that shit, it was like the minute because he's just like, look, I'm gonna focus on making money, right, instead of focusing on the money I don't have. Yeah, and I understand. He was like, I've never had to worry ever again. Like,
yeah, when you shift your mindset about it, it's so valuable. It's 100% true. That stuff. But yeah, I want to have more money in the bank. I could put a dollar amount out there, but it doesn't matter. Like, when I have more money in the bank, I want the studio to be in an elevated manner. I don't mind if we're still here. I like it, but maybe continue to dress. I've been kind of slowly renovating this place, and maybe get some better decor, maybe continue to expand my gear. I got a whole rack over here I got to fill up with cool shit, and then those two over there. So I really want more gear, and I want to continue to grow as a mixer, be better at my job, and maybe, I do kind of like a bucket list wish to like record like a high profile band, something that's eluded me all my career. It's like I don't have a dream to record only high profile bands. Like, that's not something I want, because I know guys that have done that and do that, and a lot of them are like, it's not what you think, you know. And I can imagine, but to do it one time, have a record that I have records in Best Buy and Hot Topic and shit like right now, like but to do it with a band that like is gonna chart, you know, like the Black Dahlia Murder, or you know, not Periphery, but a band like that, you know what I mean, like a band I like the not Periphery, yeah, but you know, something like that. Like I would want to work with a band like that at some point in my life, for sure. But not, I like what I do now, but to do something like that would be really cool. You want to
play with the major leagues once?
Yeah. I guess, of course, yeah. I consider like right now, like we're in the D League. You know what I mean? Like we're doing a good job, and we can go play with the big dogs, but you know, some coach somewhere has got to recognize us and say, oh, that dude, you know, like Jonathan Simmons, man. Like, I don't know if you keep up with the Spurs or not, but like, you know,
where is he now?
He's in Orlando.
Okay, yeah.
But he's the sixth man in Orlando. He's the first guy off the bench, you know, and he got paid like $10 million. That dude paid $150 to go try out for the Austin Spurs, the D League. Made the team.
It was the best investment of his
grinded, life. Never stopped, you know, despite, you know, low level income. Got the chance to play, shined, got cut, stayed with the Austin Spurs, re-signed 10 days. Then they got his chance.
Yeah,
he shined. Then now he's living in Orlando, playing with the Magic and making millions. And
doesn't Florida have that good tax too?
They do not.
They don't. Mm-hmm. All right, that's confusing it.
Yeah, Florida and Texas are the only two states, I believe, that don't do a state income tax. There might be more, but I don't remember.
All right. What is the perfect day?
Oh man. Perfect day for me would be waking up, my son's in a good mood, get a call from a band, says, hey, we want to start recording next month. We got a check for you right now, $6,000. And sweet. Get a call from a friend. Hey, we're having some drinks tonight on me. And we're going to go do dinner first. Bring your wife. All right. My mom calls and says, hey, I want to watch your son tonight for no reason. I'm like, okay, perfect. So go out, have a badass dinner, get some drinks, get my check sent to me through like PayPal with no fees. And it's instantly deposited into my bank, so I don't got to wait like 3 days for it. And then come home, receive some dome, you know, have some sex, and then have a relaxing night's sleep. That's a good day.
That's a good.
That's Ice Cube day.
Today was a good day. Ooh, wow, wow. That was a good answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only answer better than that is my friend gave me times. He literally,
he started
with like 8, 9. And
he went to the perfect day, and then involved waking up at 8 o'clock.
I was laughing. He took me through his whole fucking day, but kind of similar to what you said. But he gave me. I was like, "Have you done this day before?"
Yeah, yeah. I have good days. I have a lot of good days, but that would be like the perfect day.
I almost feel like there's another one where we've probably tap danced around this, but where does it come from? Like, where does the will to carry on come from? Does it come from within for you, a higher power?
No, I mean, I think it comes from my goals, you know. Like, I don't have like a failure mechanism like in me. You know what I mean? Like to me, I think the word failure is like misused, because it's impossible to fail. Really, you know what I mean? Failure isn't something that can happen, right? Like I use the analogy with basketball with a friend of mine a few years ago, and I really believe this. like I really truly believe this, that if I said in my current state right now, 31 years old, I want to play professional basketball, that I could do it. I really believe that I could. And what would that look like? And I explained that to him. I said, I would need to, first of all, what I would do is I would find someone that is playing basketball, maybe in college, and talk to them about their game, and maybe try to find some kind of exchange between them helping me for free in exchange for something that I do, so I don't have to pay for it. Then I would read about diets from athletes. I would read about workout plans from athletes, and I would figure out a way to work out the way they work out, eat the way they eat, and I would learn how to practice from someone who's doing it. And then I would play as much as I possibly could until I could try out for like the Austin Spurs. And I know that if it might not be, and the reason I say that is because I wouldn't fail, because I wouldn't stop until I did it. And that's the only way to fail, is to stop. If you've decided you want to do something, the only way to fail, failure doesn't exist. Stopping exists, but stopping is what causes the perception of failure, is to just stop or to give up. So if someone has failed at something, it's because they stopped trying. So your initial question was the what's driving me? Yeah. Well, what drives me is that I'm unwilling to stop. And what's made me unwilling to stop? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's that I've, been overlooked for things I thought I was qualified for in my life, and I just have this like desire to prove the world wrong, or if in a combination of that, I guess if I'm thinking out loud, I do have a desire for notoriety. I want people to know who I am. I really do. But not for selfish well, maybe for a little bit selfish reasons, but I want to be known as a figure that helps. I kind of want to be Tony Robbins.
Okay.
Because
the way based on your answer with the funeral, like it seems to me legacy is important for you.
Very much, yeah. I mean, I really want to be Tony Robbins. Like if I could say, if you look at Tony Robbins, he owns like 8 businesses. Yeah. He owns an island. He's a multi-billionaire. He's a man that has offered value to people like Oprah, who are billionaires, like to people like Tiger Woods. Like he gets into people's brains and changes their wiring. And that's what I want to be. That's who I am. That's so if I could be any person in the world that wasn't me, or if I could model my life after somebody, it would be Tony Robbins. Like I really want to be Tony Robbins. I mean, I don't want to be Tony. I want to be me, but the things that Tony has done and the things that Tony does and the achievements that Tony has had, I would cry if I found out he died. Like I did with Steve Jobs. Like him and Steve are like heroes to me. I look at them the way that people look at Michael Jordan, or LeBron James or whatever, or Tim Duncan, I love Tim Duncan too, but like, yeah, Tony Robbins is the man. But because Tony Robbins is playing chess in a world that's like playing ping pong. You know what I mean? Like he's doing things that you don't even know he's doing, and he's doing them to your face. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Like he's like a wizard. So yeah, what's fueling me, going back to that original question, is just, legacy, being somebody that people know for offering value and love and guidance and just value, adding value to as many people's lives as I can.
All right. This is the last one. This one's called I Like, I Wish, I Wonder. I like that I did. I wish I had done. I wonder what would have happened if.
I like that I did. I what?
I like that I did, and then fill in the blank. I wish I had done. I wonder what would have happened if.
Oh, I liked that I was able to play in a band that like played in other states.
Hmm.
The last one was.
I wonder what would have happened if.
Oh, I wonder what would have happened if I did not stop selling cars.
All right, man. Do you if you want to plug anything, obviously your stuff.
Oh, wow. My Patreon, man. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm focusing on right now as far as the studio is concerned. Yeah. I don't know if you market this to like other people that are like us and interested in music and whatnot.
I put it out there. Like I make little cut ups, put it on Instagram and stuff.
Yeah.
So like whoever hears it.
Yeah. No, my Patreon's real important to me right now. It's I've been talking about it like it was the Dollar Shave Club. You know what I mean? That's kind of the model for me. Like instead of each month getting a razor, you're getting like drum samples.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so like for basically for $5 a month, somebody can subscribe to my Patreon. And in that, each month there's going to be new custom like drum samples that I make. I'm recording drum sets all the time, so at the drum studio that I work at. So the quality is badass. I mean, I think the snare that I recorded last month was recorded through like a $12,000 signal chain, and it sounds great. There's a top mic, a bottom mic, and a hallway, so you can kind of control how big it sounds. And you just upload it into like a drum sampler program. It's unprocessed, so you can compress it or EQ it however you like and fit it within your mix. And I'm doing that each month. And on top of that, I offer tips and tricks and advice on recording. I'm going to be doing I do guitar reamp at higher levels. So there's like the $5 where it starts, but there's other levels like a $10 level, a $20 level, a $50 level and whatnot that, if you see value in some of those other perks, you can subscribe to. But yeah, for $5 a month, you can support the studio and get yourself some good drum samples out of it. And I even have a $1 a month option for people that literally just want to support the studio, just say, hey, I appreciate you. And I'll put $1 a month into what you're doing. And so my goal for that is to have 1 million subscribers. I want to have 1 million subscribers that are giving me $1 a month.
I don't even know if I've seen a Patreon with 1 million.
There's not, there's not, and it may not be possible to do with a studio background, but I'm gonna try.
Why not?
I mean, I not to just open another pot because I probably got to wrap up too, but yeah, I do. I've always been, since in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been really fascinated with the concept of making $1 off of 1 million people.
No, that's a great idea. The similar concept would be 1,000 true fans, and you get like 100 from them or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. I the Netflix model, to me, when I saw it, I was like blown away. I said, this is the most genius thing in the world because it's such a small amount of money that you'll never cancel it.
Yeah.
Like it's too much of a pain in the ass to cancel that you just keep subscribing. But then they evolved to something that now you can't live without, especially if you don't have TV like me.
That comes from the algorithm and other things. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but before they used to actually send you discs and not everything was available online.
Yeah.
At that point in its process, there was times where I wanted to cancel it because I saw it went through. I'm like, man, I never even used this thing.
Yeah.
But it's like the process of logging in, remembering my password, and like trying to cancel it was so tedious that I just never did. So it's kind of like, I feel like if I could get 1 million subscribers to something at $1 a person, that no one would ever cancel, because it's like, it's just $1, but it's happening over the span of 1 million people. So it's I'll make $1 million a month, and it's not hurting anyone.
Yeah, 1 million microtransactions.
Yeah, that's what I'm fascinated with. So, that's, I've always been focused. The Patreon was the first time I actually went and tried to pursue something like that. But there's something there for me later on in life that I feel like I'm gonna get there. But
that's what's up.
Yeah.
I put Magnus, and I don't know if you ever met Leroy. I put them on it like many years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
I put them both on there. Leroy never took it seriously. On Patreon years ago.
Oh, okay.
Like I told him about it, like, hey, I guys should do this because y'all do what y'all do.
Oh, you like introduced it to him.
Yeah. Leroy tried it once, but I think he didn't take it seriously. But Magnus kind of sort of does.
Yeah. Well, so, Leroy is having some success right now, isn't he?
Oh yeah. Well, that's why. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, no, he's doing real well. I just talked to him a day or two ago.
That's cool. I haven't talked to him in several years.
We
used to hang out like daily.
Yeah. Well,
back in the day.
We did too, probably when he's in Austin and when he lived with the Ramones, if you ever met them. When he was living in their closet. That's when I meet him, Magnus, and the whole world.
Oh, okay.
But I feel like that's the only negative thing about him being successful. Is like, man, I feel like I lost my friend. Because he's just always working.
How successful is he right now? Like, what's going on for him?
I think
I saw he played a big festival or something.
Yeah, so I would say he gets signed maybe, I think, let's say 2 years ago. And year one was, I remember talking to him, and it's just like, it's fun to be on. Like it's fun that he's there, but nothing's really happening. There's no sales. There's nothing. He's not making money, he tells me. But now this year, it's like, if you go check him anywhere on these things, like Armin van Buuren played his track, do you know who that is? All right, well, people who matter in that world play his track. Because like a whole list. Like people that we were listening to growing up are playing his music. You type his name and Armin, it pops up. His
name. I didn't even know
Ferry,
Leroy made music.
Yeah. Oh, he makes. Leroy, in my opinion, was the best producer that I knew because he did all the genres. He has a metal one, which I'm sure you've heard some of his metal stuff called Try Something. I don't remember. But he had like all the genres versus like maybe me, I kind of focused primarily on hip hop and maybe dubstep at the time. Or like Magnus has two, right? Ambient and then the other stuff.
The metal stuff, yeah.
But he had like, okay, here's my hip hop thing. Here's my weird like Russian thing with Magnus. Here's my that, and they all sounded pretty decent. And the one that made it is the one that I probably liked the least was his trance one, because it was a lot of major key music, and I was like, this is bright and happy and stupid.
Yeah.
And you know who likes that? The world.
Yeah. That's why I'll never be cool. Yeah, I don't like that kind of stuff either.
Yeah, minor key metal doesn't work, especially right now. But yeah, no, he's doing good. He opened up for Paul Van Dyke, which is the guy who owns that label in New York. And yeah, that guy is also not just the owner of the label, but he's one of the trance like legends in that world,
That's badass.
So I feel like, I don't know how the money thing is right now for him, but I feel like assuming the trajectory just keeps going that way, that like sooner or later he'll be
he'll get paid to play shows and stuff. Yeah. So like, yeah, I mean, if he can stay afloat, that's all that matters,
Yeah,
that's badass.
Which is
if he watches
this,
shout out to Leroy.
Yeah. I'll send it to him.
That's my dog.
Because I don't get to talk to him with a voice anymore, but honestly, email him or text and he'll always respond. So I'm
that's
like,
awesome.
I'll send it.
You have to give me his email or something. Yeah, I haven't talked to him in a long time.
Yeah, he's cool, man. I love that dude. But last words and we good.
Oh man, I think we're good. Yeah.
All right, man. We'll bake that chicken, smoke that turkey. Boosh. And thanks again for doing this, dude.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you.
When I go to sleep, I dream of red suns in the bed. No, that makes no sense, and you're the only one that probably cares. Lately, little Teddy's been turning into nightmares, gnashing teeth and sharp claws, violent, and I'm always scared. She's got a fake boyfriend. He lives in LA. Says she met him online. I mean, what else can I say? Said he'll visit next May, but that's hard to believe, cause he works in a cafe and playing tickets ain't free. Says he's in school, he's doing big things. He'll be the best welder this world's ever seen. God, I sound like an asshole. I don't mean to be mean. It's just when we talked, you had bigger dreams. I know, I drag my feet and did you wrong. No one on this earth deserves to wait upon my love this long. I never told you sorry, so I gotta put it in the song. My nightmares, they haunt me. I know, I drag my feet and did you wrong. No one on this earth deserves to wait upon my love this long. I never told you sorry, so I gotta put it in the song. My nightmares, they haunt me. When I go to sleep, I dream of red sun and the beds. I know that makes no sense. You're the only one that probably cares. Lately, little Teddy's been turning into nightmares, gnashing teeth and sharp claws, violent, and I'm always scared. She's got a fake boyfriend. He plays in a band. Parents say he's too old. They just don't understand. To get married's the plan, but she wants a ring. And he works at a cafe, and them things ain't free. Yeah, I know he's in school. He's doing big things. He'll be the best plumber this world's ever seen. I know I'm being an asshole, but all I can do is be mean. 1,000 miles away, and he's more there than I could ever be. I know, I drag my feet and did you wrong. No one on this earth deserves to wait upon my love this long. I never told you sorry, so I gotta put it in the song. My nightmares, they haunt me. I know, I drag my feet and did you wrong. No one on this earth deserves to wait upon my love this long. I never told you sorry, so I gotta put it in the song.